This is recording 3 for topic 2. We've talked about frequency distributions, calculating frequency and graphing, and now we're going to talk about types of distributions. So we talk about basic data distribution shapes, okay? And this is for interval ratio data variables only, okay? Now, we're not going to look at the statistical values because everything can be calculated and given a number. We're not going to talk about that in this class. We are just going to be visually inspecting the data. So we've already seen that the normal distribution, the idealized normal distribution, is also called a bell curve. It's a bell-shaped curve, okay? It's symmetrical. The far left and right proportions contain the low-frequency extreme scores, and they're called tails. So here's an ideal normal distribution. The mean, the median, and the mode are all the same as we spoke about before, and we'll cover again next week, okay? And the tails are where the low frequency extreme scores happen, okay? In a normal distribution, the mean, the median, and the mode are the same. Mean is the average. Median is the midpoint of a frequency distribution, where 50% of the scores lie above and 50% below. And the mode, most frequently occurring score. So here is a normal distribution of real data. It obviously is not going to be like the ideal one because this is an empirical frequency distribution. These are real data, right? Here's an example of a distribution of real data, frequency distribution, real data that's normal, right? And you can have SPSS add this curve, normal curve, that helps you visualize it, right? These are the data for moral agency, for the variable moral agency. There's many more distributions. This is actually using Jamovi rather than SPSS, but it will be more or less the same. Most statistical software will give you this, right? And these are the big five personality factors of openness to experience. So openness to experience, conscientiousness, this is big five: conscientiousness, extroversion, agreeableness, and neuroticism, right? These are more or less normal, although these low scores suggest maybe a slight negative skew, which probably isn't much, right? So what's this about a negative skew? Skewed distributions are not symmetrical, and they have one tail that is more pronounced than the other. The distribution may be either negatively skewed or positively skewed. And this depends whether the tail is to the left, that's a negative skew, where almost all scores are high and a few are low, or to the right, most scores are low, a few are high. So let's think about a classic example here. So think about income. Think about income in the United States or in the world. So this is frequency on the y-axis, and this is income, right, on the x-axis. So most people's income, I think median income, I don't know, it's like 56,000, it's right about here, right? But then there are a few people who make billions and billions of money, right? Billions and billions of dollars. So this is a very huge positive skew, right? And this is messy. Really, this would be a straight line, right? It would be maybe like this, right? But the point is a big positive skew for income. This means the bulk of the scores, right, are low, and there are a few very, very high scores that pull the mean upward, right? So in a positive skew, the mean, which is probably around here, with the mean, is going to be higher than the median, which is probably around here, and the mode, which is right here, the highest point, the biggest frequency. So an example of a positively skewed distribution is income, where most people don't make that much and a few people make billions, right? So let's look at some more examples here. So here's a negative. Here's the opposite. A negatively skewed has a few low scores and most people have high scores, right? Here's another example from real data. We can actually draw that curve, right? We can see most people have high scores. And then we have this long tail going out to a few low scores. And here, the mean is going to be lower than the median and the mode, which is right here in this case, right? The mode is the most frequently occurring score. So this is the mode. This would be the mean, more or less. This would be the median, sorry. And this would be the mean, which is pulled downward by a few low scores, right? Here's some more examples from real data from the current version of SPSS. So here's an SPSS negative skew, self-esteem. Most people self-report pretty high self-esteem. And I want to point out something here. One clue that a variable is skewed is we have this high cliff on one side and a few low scores on the other. So if the high cliff is on the right, that means most people have high scores and there's a few low ones, so it's a negative skew, right? What about a positive skew? It's like income, the opposite, except for, income doesn't really look like this. Income looks like this, right? And that's not an exaggeration, right? That means most people have low scores and a few people have high scores. Here's an example of real data, right? This is from an old data set. I don't even remember who collected it. Again, we have that cliff on the left because most people have low scores. And these a few people have lots of children. Most people have, one or two children, zero, because there's a lot of younger people here, students, right? And here's an example from recent SPSS, positive skew. This is racism, people actually self-reporting. That means what they say in a survey. Most people say they're not at all racist, but a few people do admit to being racist, right? So we have that cliff on the left and a few really high scores on the right. Okay, a few more. Another type, this, for example, is a unimodal one mode. There is one mode. Once in a while, you get bimodal distribution. This just means there are two modes, two scores which occur the same, which are the highest occurring, the most frequently occurring. So it has two distinct humps, not very normal. Okay, finally, this is the week 2 lecture quiz on Canvas. So I want you to pause the video now and open up that quiz on Canvas. All right. You can also do it looking at the PDF. Okay. You'll need to look at each one and decide what answer the multiple choice question that is involved. Okay. So you can just work through these at your leisure and identify the shape of each distribution. Okay. All right. Supposing you've done this, let's take a look at the class data set. Now, you guys have done the exact same thing, but I'm recording this in fall 2022. So these are the data for fall 2022. You guys have answered the same questions. So from fall 2022, we can see that most people had a job. These are pie charts, okay? These are nominal data. So pie charts or bar charts are appropriate, right? Most people had a job, 64.8%. So I chose percentage. For favorite genre, most people, the majority, the biggest portion, the biggest piece of the pie was mystery, suspense, and thriller, right? Most people's parents did not graduate from college, 34.9% did. And yet 70.5% plan to go on to a 4-year college, which is great, right? Okay, so if you have any questions, please email me or first post it on, the question and answer section.